So I'd like to talk about two themes that are orientated around control. They're very similar themes and they're often paired quite close together. I'm talking about analytical and deliberative. Analytical sits in strategic thinking and deliberative sits in execute. And these domains provide important clues in understanding the nature of these themes. But because they are quite similar, I've seen that in many ways bits of analytical have intruded into the definition of deliberative and vice versa. So I'm going to attempt to share some thoughts around how I see the distinction between the two. So let's start with analytical being strategic thinking. So analytical is oriented towards information, and its intentionality is the desire to understand something at its base level and then to interrogate that base level to see whether it is in fact valid. So the validity of analytical lies in integrity. Does that thing retain its shape regardless of the situation? In other words, analytical wants to know what can be trusted and trusted on a permanent basis. So the idea of a fact, according to analytical, is something that does not change shape, meaning, form, or any aspect to it under every single condition. And so it can be trusted in its form. And then what analytical will do, depending on the other themes, is then add or reconstruct the various facts together to create a whole that then can be trusted because each of the parts can be trusted. So analytical, all it really wants to do is to break reality down to its core components, interrogate the core components for their validity, and then understand and apply those core components into the right areas. The intentionality, as I say, behind analytical is attention to detail and accuracy in decision making and accuracy in design. So the whole point basically is if you are using facts the entire time, you can have certainty in an outcome because you've only used facts to create that outcome or to design the process for that outcome. Now where deliberative comes in is that deliberative is an execute theme, and as such is around control, functional control, or execution. So all the executing themes want to do something. They have an end in mind. They have an outcome. And the outcome for deliberative is the assurance that an outcome will take place exactly as expected. For deliberative, it really is oriented around identifying risk factors and then gets its kicks from controlling those risk factors. In other words, deliberative believes that in order for a perfect outcome or very specific, not necessarily perfect, but a very specific outcome to be achieved, means that if you control everything that could go wrong, it will go right. It's simple logic. And the idea is if you miss something, it will go wrong. So do your best to identify what could go wrong and then control that factor. Now this is where it teams up with analytical, because if it's close to analytical, then analytical will try and identify key factors. Deliberative will then work out which of those factors are likely to be risky, and the two will then tag team to work out a strategy of ensuring that control takes place. This is why someone with analytical and deliberative is so particular around what they do, and if you throw in discipline, they are extra particular around what they do. They might even appear pedantic. So if somebody's got analytical and deliberative in their minds, why would you attempt something? There's no such word as attempt. Attempt is basically failure waiting to happen. You either do or don't do, and if you're going to do it, use your analytical to identify the key factors, ensure that there is integrity around those factors, identify which factors are going to influence a decision, work out the threat level and the ability to control those key factors, establish a method of controlling those factors, execute that method, and you will guarantee a particular outcome. Obviously, this is quite a slow process and is very thorough. So people with analytical and deliberative do not necessarily like being rushed. And it is also why they speak to a large extent with certainty. They cannot understand why anyone would speak or would share unless, of course, they'd gone through this, what we would call a rigorous process. So deliberative and analytical together really do like being in situations where a precise result, the exact result that you are looking for, can be achieved. And they thrive on calculating both how to do that and then ensuring that it is done. So a deeply satisfying thing for somebody with both those themes is to have cracked the process and then managed the process. And as I say, it's less about perfection and more about precision. If you want something to equal 1.10004, then you calculate it to 1.0004, because if you don't hit 1.004, you've failed. That is basically the mentality of someone dominant with deliberative and analytical. I hope that helps. Please post your questions, thoughts. If you like, subscribe, please do. And if you're enjoying this, please tell a friend.